part of the warrant issued against Menno Simons in 1542. He's accused of rebaptism. Anyone who houses him, gives him food or drink, or has his writings in his possession will be punished as a heretic. The person who captures Menno will receive a reward of 100 gold Carolus guilders. According to an old anecdote, a travelling coach in which Menno Simons was travelling was stopped. The bailiff asked the coachman, "Is Menno Simons in the coach?" Menno, sitting beside the coachman, was kind enough to repeat the bailiff's question for those sitting inside. All the fellow passengers answered negative, whereupon Menno turned to the bailiff and said, "The gentlemen say no." The bailiff, satisfied, let them go on. The pressure of persecution led to a transient way of life. Menno Simons lived a while in Cologne and in Wismar on the Baltic Sea, but he was continually obliged to flee again. This is a map of the areas where Menno worked, but he was also in Amsterdam, in Limburg, and in the Baltic states. From time to time he returned to Friesland. He was in Leeuwarden in 1549. It is known from legal documents that the man who sheltered him at the time was arrested shortly afterwards and beheaded. Other Anabaptists met their death at the stake. In spite of that, Menno visited Harlingen in 1556. The only letter in Menno's own hand that is preserved. It was written around 1550 and addressed to some widows. In this portrait of Menno Simons, done by Christoffel van Sichem in 1677, the hat is purposely drawn in such a way that it looks as though he has donkey ears. In 1554, after many wanderings, Menno finally found a place of refuge in Woestenfelde, halfway between Hamburg and Lübeck, on the estate of Count von Ahlefeld. Nearby was the so-called Menno Cote, where he had a printery. Menno, who knew Latin, wrote all his works in the people's language. Later, various translations in German and English appeared as well. They say he planted the big linden tree, which is quite likely. You can see by the diameter how old this splendid tree must be. Menno Simons' wife died shortly after their arrival at Woestenfelde. He himself was sickly and walked poorly due to an accident that had happened to him on one of his trips. Here he is shown with a crutch. For this reason he could no longer be as active in the Brotherhood as he had been before that time. In that period, there arose great difference of opinion about the use of disciplinary measures and the exclusion of members from the congregation. At his death in 1561, Menno was buried in his kitchen garden. In the neighborhood has been erected an obelisk in 1957 with the text, Menno Simons, 1492-1559, now nearly hidden in the bushes. This is where Woestenfelde was once located. The village was totally destroyed in 1627 during the 30 Years' War. A stone with a plaquette has been erected in the garden behind the Menno Cote with the text, "Here lived, taught and died Menno Simons, in humility, pious and still." The dates given are 1492 and 1559. Mainly is used as date of birth of Menno Simons 1496 and his date of death 1561. The Mennonite movement had grown tremendously in that period, in spite of harsh persecutions. As much as a quarter of the population of Friesland was Mennonite in 1580. At the time there were Mennonite congregations in Whitmarsum and Pingham too. At the outskirts of the village of Whitmarsum was a small, simple dwelling. In it, The first Anabaptists in that place met secretly. An 18th century map indicates near Whitmarsham Menno Seaman's old meeting house. It is not very likely that Menno preached here for a while after joining the Anabaptists in 1536, as the story goes, because the authorities were too watchful concerning Menno. The dwelling was later replaced by a small church with a little dome. A memorial stone was masoned between the windows. This is how the interior of this church looked. It was used from 1828 to 1878 and was then demolished. Of course, no churches remained from that first period of the Anabaptists because they didn't dare construct them. Even when the severe persecution stopped, still the Anabaptists were not allowed to build churches recognizable as such from the outside. They must look like ordinary houses, preferably not be located near the street, and they must have no spires. The Mennonite church at Grau is an example of a hidden church. The way to the meeting house at the back is the door of this high house. The Mennonites always had to take into account that they would be checked upon. Any reformed minister had the right to take over a service from the Mennonite preacher. Mennonites in the Netherlands didn't get civil rights until 1795, when the French came. The meeting house in Pingham, where you are now, is a typical hidden church built in approximately 1600, after the time of Menno Simons, of course. The window in the shape of a semicircle above the door is indeed somewhat unusual. The church is typical Anabaptist meeting house style. Along the walls, benches for the brothers. In the middle, chairs for the sisters. Beside the pulpit, benches for the church council, and a separate place with a lectern for the song leader. In 1879, the Menno Simons monument was erected on the field by Utvliet near Whitmarsham, where the old church used to stand. In front of it, the gable stone from the old church reposes, masoned into bricks. The text says, "Whitmarsham can by right boast about Menno Simons, and the Netherlands can call him their church reformer. Here was the place where he boldly broke the yoke of the priests, and in this house he spoke for the first time according to free conscience." The high obelisk has texts on 4 sides. In memory of Menno Simons, born in Whitmarsham, 1496. 1536, Menno's departure from property. For 3 centuries, Mennonites of Whitmarsham and the surrounding area gathered on this spot. According to tradition, Menno spoke here to his first followers.